On this Thursday edition of the OFN Today, Ted Sevransky of Covers.com will help me to analyze the latest conference and playoff races in college football, as well as preview some of the top games this week in the NFL. Meanwhile, Kyle Madson, managing editor for the NinersWire.usatoday.com, will update the state of the 49ers as they prepare for a Monday Night Football tilt in Green Bay. As the OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. It's Thursday, October 11th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today. The OFN Today is brought to you by Ourlads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts on the net, and Covers.com, featuring live scores, stats, and odds. Considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so Ted, let's get started with some college football talk this week and take a look at how some of the top conferences are shaping up. Now we've entered the halfway point of the season, and we can start with the SEC in Alabama and talk a little bit about what it's going to take for Alabama to not make the playoffs as a minus 200-1 pick to win the championship. And I guess it's really simple, right? It's lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game and have three other teams that have a good resume, right?
Sure. I mean, when you start talking about how the committee wants to rank teams, they'll do everything they can to get Alabama in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
sure.
Anybody loses anything that they can stick Alabama, because Alabama is a moneymaker. Alabama gets the ratings. Alabama's the marquee program. Alabama's got the superstars. And, of course, Alabama has been the top program in college football for more than a decade now. I mean, when you look at potential roadblocks between here and an SEC title game, they still have to travel to LSU for a night game in Baton Rouge. They still have Auburn in their regular season finale. So there are a couple potential stumbling blocks for the Crimson Tide. But
we know they'll win those games. But we know they'll win those games, especially since LSU's got no offense, as usual. And Jarrett Stidham just plain and simply stinks. So that means that if we look at it, the best way, though, is Ohio State doesn't lose, wins the Big Ten championship, they're in. Clemson doesn't lose, wins the ACC, they're in. Georgia beats Alabama, SEC championship game, there's your three teams. The most likely, then, team that makes the most sense for me that knocks Alabama out is a Notre Dame undefeated season. Correct.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, but this much I've learned, okay? And, I've been in Vegas since 1998, and people start trying to predict the playoffs in October. And there will be, I know we know who all the best teams are. There will be drama somewhere. Someone's going to lose something. There's controversy. It doesn't play out on October 11th, in December, the way it looks on October 11th. It never does, because the one thing we cannot predict at this stage of the campaign, who's going to get hurt, where the injury is going to strike, because any one of these teams gets banged up, and the national championship dreams will go down in flames.
Well, the bottom line, though, is that unless that scenario happens, Alabama's going to get into the playoff.
One would think, yes,
because again, even if they lose to Georgia, the scenario I laid out, that's the only way that Alabama is gonna miss out on the playoffs. Because and to think that, like you said, to think that Clemson, Ohio State, or Notre Dame, one of those teams won't lose. Yeah, I think that's a long shot, because we're not going to get three undefeated teams in the playoffs. That just doesn't happen. So we're going to get losses. I will say this, though. Look, I don't care about, as you know, we talked about what the national media said before, and I really don't care. I just use it to make a point. They've all talked about how great Alabama is for years. Every year they're the best team that's ever lived. I know this team is better, we talked about it, than even those teams because they have an offense now. So I understand that. So I don't really care what they say, because they're like, the boy who cried wolf. They say it all the time. They're not the best team all the time. But this team, yes, I can see this team being better than maybe any team he's ever had, because he's got the best offense he's ever had. But they are still minus 200 to win a national championship. And if people do play futures, that's just the number. I don't care if you're Alabama or the New England Patriots. I mean, I think you're crazy to lay money down like that in the first week of October.
Sure, and recognize what you're betting. You're laying $2 to win $1. You get Alabama, and you don't get the other 129 college football teams.
Yeah.
It's Alabama against the field, and you're laying 2-1. That's not my definition of value.
No.
I understand, Alabama's great. Maybe they do win the national title. I would never make that bet. I wouldn't even consider making that bet. It's not a good bet. And, of course, your money's going to be locked up from now until January as well.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to actually root against them in the SEC championship game, then take them if you like them that much. Because then at that point, you're getting much better odds. Because, again, we would still think that if they lose the SEC championship game, they'll find a way to get into the playoffs, and they probably will win the championship anyhow. So what about Notre Dame's chances? What are you thinking about Notre Dame? Because Book is really making this team, this Notre Dame team, into a true national championship contender, because the defense, in my mind, has proven all season that they're national championship caliber. So you get Book, you get Dexter Williams. Those are two components the offense hasn't had all season. They're starting to definitely intrigue me as a legit playoff team. I just don't know yet whether or not I can see them winning a national championship.
Well, one thing Notre Dame, we're giving them a whole lot of credit for what they've done so far this season. And, realistically, I got some questions to ask about that, in terms of what they've done. They played a good first half against Michigan. If those two teams met today, I think Michigan would be favored. Again. And they hung on in the second half and yada, yada. But it wasn't like so they had this nice-looking win on their resume against the Wolverines in a game where they had a good first half and took a big lead, and that was that.
Yeah.
The game against Stanford, they got Stanford the right time, the right place at the
right
right
after
time.
Oregon.
Costello wasn't very good that game.
Well, right after Oregon. That was expecting a lot.
Traveling east after Oregon.
Yeah.
They get Virginia Tech after they lose their starting quarterback. Notre Dame's still got to travel. They have Navy, they have Northwestern, they have Florida State, they have Syracuse, and at USC to close out the season. I think the Irish take a loss before the end of the regular season, maybe more than one.
I believe it. Yeah, because it's not a majorly tough schedule, but these are all teams that can win on the right day. They can beat Notre Dame on the right day. Maybe Northwestern. To tell you the truth, they might be the team that as I think we have known Northwestern even this year, they definitely, especially under Pat Fitzgerald, getting them as a nice heavy underdog at home with Clayton Thorson at quarterback. I can definitely look at the schedule and say, you know what, I think I might actually favor Northwestern as the one team that has the best chance to beat them, even more so than USC.
I'm interested to see Syracuse play them at Yankee Stadium.
That'll be a nice scene.
Was that Thanksgiving week?
Yes, the week before. Yeah. That'd be nice. I got to imagine that the Orange fans have been buying those tickets after almost beating Clemson and off to a good start and throttling Florida State. So because look, Notre Dame though. I think with this schedule, the chances aren't as good, even though they're Notre Dame. If they lose a game, they're still not going to jump over Georgia, Ohio State, or Clemson with one loss. I can't imagine that's going to happen.
Yeah, see, all this stuff is, this is what I've seen happen in November, okay? And I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Not once, not twice, like 20 times. All right, somebody loses to somebody, and it's a bad loss, and somebody else loses to somebody, but it's not as bad a loss. And then everyone says, which is the best one-loss team? And with the team that ends up getting the break from the committee is the team that's going to make them the most money.
Sure.
And Notre Dame is a team that can make them money. But to try to project, if they lose and somebody else loses and Ohio State loses, and this, it's like in my opinion, it is a completely pointless exercise. It's something for guys on TV that want to pontificate, and they have to kill 3 hours of airtime. And here it is, second week of October. Let's figure out national championship scenarios. No, it's the middle of October. Let the season play out. This team's going to lose one. That team's going to lose one. You want to ask me these questions in mid-November, I'm going to give you mostly the same answer because a lot of the teams are going to lose in mid-November too, and Georgia will lose one, and then Ohio State will lose one the same week, and we'll have a carnage weekend, and now we have all the one-loss teams, and which one's the best one-loss, and who they lose to, and Michigan only lost in week one, and look at Michigan now, and I mean, there'll be a lot of that between now and the next 2 months. It's something to talk about, but to actually do anything with, I mean, I don't know. Not much.
Well, the odds right now to win a national championship are all too low at this point for all the favorites. So, and then you take a look at the long shots. Michigan at 25-1. Texas now down to 33-1 after the Oklahoma win. Washington is the biggest phony in the group. They're going to lose this week probably. So they're 33-1. They're not going anywhere. Oklahoma's done. They've already got a loss. They're not going to get enough respect. I wonder about Penn State, though, because Penn State is the 8th-ranked team in the country, according to the AP, and they're 50-1 to win a national championship. I wonder if they're not a bad bargain at this point to sneak into the playoffs, if it all goes well for them.
Well, I mean, with the Big Ten East, you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And only one of those teams will be able to play in the Big Ten title game.
Oh, yeah, Ohio State's going to have to lose.
Well, Ohio State's going to have to lose to someone that's not Michigan, because then Michigan would win if Michigan wins it. And then the two teams that you talked about, if Michigan wins out, they would be beating Penn State as well. I mean, on the tiebreaker over the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, exactly.
But if all three of those teams, if Ohio State beats Penn State and then Penn State beats Michigan and then Michigan beats Ohio State,
we know what's going to happen again.
Who's going to make the most money, and the answer to that is Ohio State.
Yeah, because we've been down this road before.
Yeah.
So it would have to take 2 losses from Ohio State, and that's why they're 50-1 now. That's the whole idea. That's why they're 50-1. I mean, if they were,
the two teams, the very first teams you mentioned there, Michigan and Texas, they both have one loss.
Run the table.
Those losses came week one against Power 5 foes. If those two teams win out, they're live. Now, would they be good enough to beat Alabama? No. But to make the playoffs, 25-1, 33-1.
Yeah, well, they would have to. Yeah, they'd have to avoid. They'd have to hope that Alabama loses to Georgia and then somehow doesn't get in. That's how, or that they just don't play them. And somebody else
that they play
them.
a bad game. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because I like what we're seeing from both Texas and Michigan. But we know that they still have a long way to go, and it's probably next year. Don't know if they have what it takes this year.
Oh, no, Michigan's got the talent. Michigan's got talent to do whatever they want this year. They played a bad first half against Notre Dame.
Well,
make no mistake, the Wolverines are built to win in 2018.
Well, they are, but they got to still play better. I like them on Saturday.
Explain that to me, because Michigan had a bad first half against Notre Dame, and since then they've won every game.
They're my favorite team, and I don't. I want to see them play because I am looking at that big picture. I am looking at Ohio State, the team they keep losing to. I'm looking at Michigan State, the team they keep losing to. I'm looking at Penn State, and I'm saying, okay, first things first. You know what, Wisconsin, they're not any good. So you know what, prove it to me on Saturday night in a great setting. National TV, everybody's watching. Last time you were in this situation against Notre Dame, you laid a massive egg. I give them an excuse in that one, but because nobody's going to give them an excuse this time. Go out, not just beat Wisconsin, but make sure the game is over going into the fourth quarter. And if you do that, then we can start talking. Then I'll start feeling confident about maybe this team making a run for a national championship.
All they got to do is get the W. It's not about the game being over in the fourth quarter. If Michigan gets the W this week, they're live to win the national title.
I think they. Do you think Wisconsin is good enough that they should actually keep it close?
I think Wisconsin shut down Michigan the last 2 years.
Well, but
Michigan
we know why.
14-10 against Wisconsin. They haven't sniffed a point spread cover in either game.
That's because of the quarterbacks.
Hornibrook lit them up in Camp Randall last year.
Well,
but I don't
Brandon
trust
Peters
Hornibrook.
was quarterback.
What's that?
Brandon Peters was quarterback for Michigan, so that's the whole idea. That's why there's no more excuse. So we got Patterson. We keep hearing how great he is. Go ahead and prove it. Go out there, national TV, because Wisconsin, they got a pretty good defense, of course. I'm still going to try to stop the run and force Patterson to throw the football. So throw the football. Throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and beat up Wisconsin 31-10. And then
But that's not how
I'll get
Michigan
excited.
needs. Michigan has the number one ranked defense in the country. All right, Michigan doesn't need to score 31 every week to win. That's the advantage that the Wolverines have.
Well, I look at the national championship Michigan team. That was a awesome defense. This defense, not that defense. Not even close. This defense, the secondary is nowhere near as good. That defense at Charles Woodson, that defense could stop. That defense was I've never seen a Michigan defense even come close to what that defense was. I mean, they had about 8 pros on that defense. This defense is really good. No, they did. Just go check it out.
I know. I was in Ann Arbor for that championship. I know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't sell this defense short. I'll just put it that way.
Well, again,
yes,
really good
you
defense.
Knew who Charles Woodson was then because he was a Heisman candidate. This defense doesn't have Heisman candidates. Michigan, they gave up 2 touchdowns to Notre Dame in the first quarter in the opener, and since then, basically, no one's moved the football against them at all in any game.
They've had 2 bad halves: the first half of Notre Dame and the first half of Northwestern.
Yeah.
They had 2 bad halves. Problem is they lost the first game and very nearly lost that second game, and the defense would have been responsible because you have to, because this offense, like you said, I agree, this offense isn't really built to score a whole lot of points. Now, I think it's built to score just as much, if not more, than that championship team under Brian Griese. But still, you give up 17 points to Clayton Thorson Thornson's a good quarterback, but come on. They got no weapons. And then Notre Dame with Wimbush. So this is the problem I have with, they have done this before to me, where they have been, it's like one of those teams that everybody talks about, but when it really comes up to them making the big stop at the right time in the big game, they don't do it. And that's what I've been dealing with this team, for especially this year's team. A couple of times they've gotten close. I believe they're going to beat up Wisconsin. I really do. And I think if they do that, then I'm sold. But I want to see it first. And I know you feel that maybe they can win it the way they won the national championship year and just kind of beat everybody 13-10. I don't know. I mean, I think this is a different era, because I think back then we didn't have Alabama, we didn't have Clemson, we didn't. You know what I'm saying? Back then they didn't have all those great teams they had to contend with.
No, and they didn't have to play Northern Nebraska, which is the only reason that they won the national championship. They would have been 2 touchdown underdogs to the Cornhuskers had there been a national title game back in those days. Instead, they got to win the title beating Ryan Leaf in the Rose Bowl. And not covering the spread in the process, by the way.
The good old days of no playoffs or no N1 game, because I'm not really sure you can call these playoffs. All right, let's talk about the NFL games now. And the big one, of course, is Kansas City and New England. I've talked about this a few times this week, as well as with Matt Connor from ArrowheadAddict.com. He's the editor for the Chiefs website there. So and I think I've talked about this with Dave Koken as well. I like the Patriots here. I don't know why I wouldn't like the Patriots here. How often do you get the Patriots as a 3-point home favorite after they lost a couple of weeks ago on national TV? To me, that's the bad loss that we get from them every year. That's the embarrassment on national TV we get from them every year. They are not going to get embarrassed a second time. They are not going to lose a second time on national TV in a span of a few weeks. This is a Chief team that beat them up at home last year. You got Belichick understanding how important it is for his legacy to continue to prove to everybody what kind of a genius he is with Patrick Mahomes. And don't tell me he hasn't been waiting for this one. And so has Tom Brady. So when the Patriots come to play and I get Brady, Belichick on the field, and I only have to give 3 points at home, I don't care who they're playing. I'm taking the Patriots.
Well, you don't got to lay 3. You got to lay 3.5.
I always buy the half point.
Really?
Sure, absolutely.
You spend an extra 20. How much do you get to do? How much does your book charge you to pay to buy off a 3?
I guess it all depends, obviously, how much. I mean, you're a little bit more of a heavy investor than I am. So I can see somebody
sure.
who puts up...
I mean, basically all the books in Nevada make it price prohibitive to buy off of 3. So if you have to pay an extra 25 cents to get on or off of 3, it's not mathematically it's not worth it.
I would still be okay with that, though. I'm all right with that. Because again,
so you're willing to pay an extra 25 cents a juice to get a push?
I'm saying that
instead of a loss.
No, They ain't winning by 3.
You don't get a win on 3.
No, they ain't winning by 3.
You just get a push on 3.
I'm not going to worry about the half point because they ain't winning by 3.
All right. Well, so you said so many things I want to disagree with. I love arguing with you. It's kind of fun. But let's start with this.
Okay.
Bill Belichick's not playing the game.
It doesn't matter.
Right?
Go ahead.
There are 2 head coaches in the NFL that have a winning straight-up record as underdogs over the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. One of them is Belichick. You know who the other guy is?
Andy Reid. We've talked about that.
You betcha. All right? We've seen the Chiefs twice now on the road, winning straight up as dogs. Let me ask you this. What about Kansas City that we've seen so far do you think is fraudulent?
Fraudulent?
Yep.
Meaning
Are the Chiefs a paper tiger? What we've seen isn't real?
On offense, no. So far,
right,
no.
So the Chiefs have an offense that is absolutely the best offense in the NFL.
No.
Make a case for the Rams, but it'd be KC or LA, correct?
Yeah, Rams 1, Chiefs 2. Yeah.
Okay, so Rams 1, Chiefs 2. So we have the second best offense in the NFL. That is not fraudulent.
It's not fraudulent, no.
Okay, the defense for Kansas City. Did you see what they did last week?
With Blake Bortles, yeah.
Did you see what they did last week?
Yes, with Blake Bortles.
They had a pass rush.
Well, that's all they have, yes.
Well, the pass rush created 4 takeaways and 5 sacks. Okay.
With Blake Bortles, yes.
Sure. Tom Brady, the only thing Brady's vulnerable to is a pass rush.
By the way, do you
know
the
only bad games Brady has is when he's under pressure.
You know who's not playing this week?
Who's not playing this week?
Justin Houston. Only the best player on the team.
I'm confident.
Okay.
Confident. And this is my biggest issue with New England. Okay, New England's 1-2. They have their hiccup games, all of that. They come back. They get Miami at home, and they blow them out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what have we seen from the Dolphins last?
Yeah, nobody cares about the
3-0 Dolphins.
Yeah.
Well, now they're the 3-2 Dolphins that are home dogs.
That's a paper tiger. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So New England beat nobody.
Sure.
Then last week they got an Indy team. Indy wasn't just banged up.
Oh yeah.
They literally 53-man roster. They just 40. They had 40 guys that were healthy by the end of that game.
Sure.
Frank Reich didn't even run practices because on the short week because he didn't have enough healthy bodies. All he did was do walkthroughs. Of course the Patriots killed them.
Sure.
So we have New England off these back-to-back blowouts that are fraudulent. We have Kansas City that's not a fraudulent team with a coach who's the best regular season, forget the playoffs, regular season head coach that you're going to find. I'm catching points. New England's a fraud. Kansas City's real. You can take the Patriots. I'll take the Chiefs plus 3.5. Not 3.
So that means the Patriots, what, are a fraud now or a fraud you think to be a fraud all season?
I think New England is significantly weaker than they were last year. I'll just put it that way. And the markets don't yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, don't you think, though, that – so what do you think about the point spread, though? Does the point spread to you – because because some of the points you're making to me, I would say, well, I'm looking at then the point spread indicating that they're taking that into account as well, is that they're not as impressive as maybe the results the last couple of weeks would have looked like, even though they're playing an undefeated team. Because we do have to go back a couple of weeks to when the Chiefs were on the road against the absolutely crappy Denver Broncos and needed a miracle fourth quarter comeback. So 3.5 is that? Do you think that if Vegas thought highly of the Patriots, this would be more like 5 or 6?
No, because Kansas City's hot right now. I mean, this is where the line should be. Line should be. I mean, you can make an argument that it should be a notch or two lower, but New England's betting bandwagon is second to none. The Belichick and the Patriots have been an extraordinary point spread team for more than a decade.
By the way, do we have a number on a significant number on how the Patriots do when they're favored of this number? Do we know that?
New England has been excellent in the home chalk roll. Excellent.
Oh, you mean no matter what the number?
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right.
But the Patriots have been excellent in every role.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know whether or not they were, because, I mean, it's pretty rare for the Patriots to be a 3-point favorite at home or a 4-point favorite.
Very rare, yeah.
So I didn't know if it probably doesn't come up very much. All right, so that's good. So we'll disagree on that one. Let's go to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and the Bengals 4-1 now ahead of the Steelers by a game and a half. And Pittsburgh, if they have any chance of winning the North, they're going to have to win this game. If they lose this game, they're done. But Pittsburgh has won 6 straight in the series, 5 straight in Cincinnati, 8 of the last 9 in Cincinnati. So that is why Cincinnati is a 2-point favorite. Because I think people would look at this and go, why are the Bengals only a 2-point favorite? I think that's why. I mean, Pittsburgh just owns the Bengals, and they own them in Cincinnati. So what do you think about the game?
As someone that's had the wrong losing side of several of those losses that you mentioned that the Bengals have suffered to the Steelers, it's really hard for me to get to the betting window with Marvin Lewis against Mike Tomlin. It's been a very, very one-sided series, and you talk about a team that Pittsburgh has confidence going to play, that would be the Cincinnati Bengals. And look, what we saw from the Steelers last week, remember I said I wouldn't touch that game with a 10-foot pole against Atlanta. We saw a complete game from the Steelers, and that made me remember a quote that I saw from Big Ben prior to the game saying, everybody's got to relax, take a deep breath, we're a quarter way in the season, we'll be just fine. The Steelers are taking money. I can understand why they're taking money. Not that the markets have been right on Pittsburgh so far this season, but it does feel like a Steelers spot, and it feels like the Steelers may well be the better of these two teams by the time December rolls around.
Yeah, I think I'll say this, though. If they win this game, then there's no doubt in my mind that this is, and at this point, because I'm not going to be, until or if Le'Veon Bell comes back, I got to see 2 or 3 games of the defense playing reasonably better than what we've seen all season. So they've got 1, so I need to see a second and maybe even a third, but the second would be a good start. But the only reason I wouldn't completely count it is because then I would say, they've got their number. Let's get to that next week. Let's do it 3 weeks in a row. Now all of a sudden, I think Pittsburgh is back to being the Pittsburgh team we know is a Super Bowl contender. But we'll see. That's why this game is a big game. Just like the Giant-Eagle game is big for many reasons in the NFC East, this is huge for the NFC North. Speaking of the NFC North, Baltimore's in Tennessee. What are they? Is that the 3rd straight road game for the Ravens, correct?
Yeah. They played the Thursday night game, right?
Yep, beat Pittsburgh.
And then they...
No, that was a Thursday night, okay. And they beat... was that Thursday night? They beat Pittsburgh, and then they...
Yeah, they ran them out.
And then they lost last week. So, now Tennessee...
Oh, no, I'm thinking of the Thursday night game where they lost to Cincinnati. Never mind.
Oh, okay. So that was what? Yeah. Monday night? The Pittsburgh game? The one in Pittsburgh? Or Sunday night? So
Sunday night.
Sunday night. So Baltimore now in Tennessee. Don't care about what Tennessee did last week because I actually had the Bills to win that game as my upset of the week, and that was just, I thought it was a perfect situation with Tennessee. Just the offense to me is still crap, but that's not – I don't think that Tennessee's offense will stay this way. I just think that it's going to take them some time with a new coordinator, completely new offensive scheme to kind of get rolling. But now they got to take on that Baltimore defense in this spot. I don't know if Joe Flacco plays 2 bad games in a row. I don't know if he's that Joe Flacco. I can give him 1 bad game. I think he's obviously played better this year. But I don't know. They're a 3-point favorite for the 2nd straight week. It didn't work out for him last week. So what do you think about that game?
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens' offense, it's been like last week Flacco was awful. The second half of the week before he was pretty rough as well. And, of course, we saw Flacco go through slumps last year that seemed to last, 4, 5, 6, 8 games. That's why they drafted Lamar Jackson, to try to light a fire under their beleaguered quarterback. And when you look at the Ravens' early season success, everything to do with red zone offense. Their red zone offense, they score touchdowns on every possession. And where they have 11 straight red zone possessions and ended in a touchdown, that isn't going to go on forever. Obviously, it didn't go on. Last week, we've seen the red zone offense start to falter a little bit for Baltimore, and that's a real concern against Tennessee because the Titans' red zone. I mean, let's give Mike Vrabel some credit for what he's done on the defensive side of the football.
Sure.
Tennessee's offense hasn't done a whole lot. The defense has been there every single game, with the exception of that game where they had to sit for like an hour and a half in the middle against Miami. That defense has been we haven't seen a lot of big plays. They're not giving up anything over the top. So to me, it feels like a tight defensive struggle. I'd almost rather have the total in this game, bet this one over, than I would rather do with anything with the side. Although Tennessee may well be live as short home dogs.
And then speaking of Cleveland, they are at home looking for a 2nd straight home win. as they take on the Chargers. Chargers got to go west to east. 1 point favorite, I think they still are at Cleveland. Look, Cleveland is a better team, no question. But I think they're playing the type of season I thought they would play. I think that a lot of people still think Cleveland could be a playoff team and maybe a North contender. I do not believe that. I look at the game last week as just one of those ugly AFC North games. They're better. They're going to be in contention by December, but they're not a better team than the Chargers, and I actually think the Chargers are better in this spot. I'd rather see the Chargers on the road, to tell you the truth, than at home as a heavy favorite. So I don't mind this spot. Again, to expect Cleveland to win 2 straight, I'm not so sure about that.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. With that, I would rather have LA than Cleveland in this ballgame. The Chargers, they're good. They're not great, but they're good.
And they'll be better when they get Bosa
mediocre.
back. What's that?
Right? And we saw again from last week, the Chargers, they probably could have hung 50 on the Raiders. One thing that we see from Phillip Rivers' team is they seem to play up or down to their level of competition a fair bit. And I do have a concern here, because one thing that Cleveland's not getting credit for, that defense has been phenomenal.
Sure.
However, that defense may well be gassed. When you have 3 overtime games in 5 weeks, it matters.
Good point.
And especially the ones that are going right down to the wire. Of course, if it comes down to it, you trust. I don't know if I trust either one of these two teams to hit a game-winning field goal. The Chargers have had all kinds of issues with their kicker this year, and of course,
that's true.
Cleveland got the game winner last week in what might have been the single ugliest game-winning field goal I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But you have like a rookie kicker who didn't even start kicking until college. I was pretty well surprised that guy got the kicking job for the Browns. And it worries me in this point spread range. Last team with the ball wins. This game's priced near pick 'em for a reason.
All right, and then the last game, this is a game that record-wise, I think a lot of people would not suspect these two teams would be in this spot in Week 6, Chicago and Miami. But Chicago is the 3-point favorite on the road in Miami. I'm not sure whether that shows a lack of respect for the Dolphins or too much respect for the Bears. Look, I believe the Bears are a better team anyway, so I'm fine with that. Just pointing it out that the Bears all of a sudden are a 3-point favorite at Miami, and Miami's got 3 wins this season. But I guess that just shows you how much respect Vegas has and generally people do have for the Dolphins. So I don't know. Still, Bears on the road in this spot. You got any history on this? Even though, of course, it's a new coaching staff, a new team. I'm not sure whether we should take any of that history into account. We probably shouldn't.
Yeah, history stuff. I'm always interested in the head coach and their particular track record in any given role. And actually, we do have one coach here with a track record in this role.
Okay.
Obviously, in Miami.
Yeah.
Where the Dolphins, Adam Gase has been okay as a home underdog. There's nothing there that says you got to bet the Dolphins every time they're a home dog, or never bet the Dolphins ever when they're a home dog.
Okay.
Gase has been close to 500 in that role. So from a recent history, there's not that much. Although a lot of Miami's problems in that role came with Jay Cutler behind center last year. They were not good. That's true. Home dogs. No one's good when they have Jay Cutler behind center.
No.
That being said, here in Las Vegas, the Chicago Bears are being viewed as I'm not going to say a legit Super Bowl contender, but a sleeper Super Bowl team. There is a lot of residual support for the Bears. Of course, his defense has been as dynamic as any in the NFL since they acquired Khalil Mack. We know that Vic Fangio is very capable of coordinating a Super Bowl caliber defense. The questions for Chicago come on the offensive side of the football, where the weapons are there, but the protection has been spotty, and Mitch Trubisky has had some rough games before his breakout performance at home against Tampa Bay's shoddy defense.
In an easy spot. That was an easy spot
prior
for
to the bye, exactly. So if we see that Trubisky, Miami's in trouble.
Sure.
Of course, the Dolphins, you talk about a bad beat. Miami leads last week 17-0. Not 1, 2 defensive scores for the Bengals in the fourth quarter of that ball game. Dolphins backers get to tear up their betting slips. But it's a Miami team, if you want to say circle the wagons time.
Oh, yeah.
Off back-to-back bad losses coming home. Miami's supposed to step up this week from a spot standpoint.
True.
I like the Dolphins off bad losses as opposed in comparison to the Bears off a
big
blowout win and a bye. I think that situation does favor Miami.
Yeah, good combination working for the Dolphins there. And look, Chicago. Right now, you're looking at other 25-1 teams. Okay, I probably won't put Cincinnati in there, but at least Cincinnati's got a track record of winning their division. But Carolina, Philly, and Pittsburgh, there is no way Chicago is in that group, especially with Pittsburgh and Philly. To win a Super Bowl, Pittsburgh and Philly, Chicago, with Mitch Trubisky. No.
Why not?
I might as well pick the Braves to win the World Series before the playoffs started. It's just not happening. It's one thing to get to the playoffs. I'm not saying they can't get to the playoffs. Super Bowl? No.
All right. I remember some guy named Brady that nobody ever heard of winning a Super Bowl with 14-point underdog.
We did.
It happens.
We did.
We
did.
And neither the Panthers nor the Falcons ended up winning their Super Bowls. But, those were two teams that in recent years came out of almost nowhere to put together monster seasons. And those monster seasons, the Panthers were really good in September. I guess the Falcons were too.
But I would have given them more of a shot.
We'll see.
But again, the point with where I would have given them more of a shot anyways, because they had quarterbacks that I could see them winning. Trubisky, like you said, show us more of the Tampa Bay game in other games against better teams, and then we can have this, okay, this is a real Super Bowl contender. But so far I've seen Trubisky a couple times this year in big spots. Early in games, looks great. Late in games, come on. The Seattle game, he was starting to wilt. The Green Bay game, we know what happened. So let's start playing better in the fourth quarter when there's more pressure on him, and then we can start talking about whether or not he can come through in the playoffs. So
okay.
I need to see that, though. And this is a good test. Miami's got a good defense.
Sure. With the Bears, the defense is going to be there. That defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense.
Agreed.
The question is what the offense can do.
Yeah. And then they got a good coach. So a good offensive coach. They just got to get Trubisky to start picking it up. I think they're next year a true Super Bowl contender if Trubisky shows dramatic improvement this season.
Sure. There'll be a lot of hype in Vegas next year on the Chicago Bears. You can count on it.
Excellent job as always, Ted. I appreciate it. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you next week. All right, take care.
Sounds good.
All right. That's Teddy Sevransky from Covers.com. And matter of fact, you can go to experts.covers.com. And you can follow him on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. So, which is his alias, Teddy Covers. It's a nice alias. I never asked him whether or not the alias Teddy Covers has anything to do. I don't know if he has like stock options with Covers.com, our sponsor. Just it's a nice little coincidence, though, isn't it? Kyle Madson joins us to talk 49ers football in just a minute. And don't forget, coming up tomorrow, not today. Normally we have the college football show on Thursdays, but Mitch Light is on the road, so we'll do it first thing in the morning before the Jets show tomorrow. So we'll have two football shows tomorrow in the morning. We got the College Football Weekly show with Mitch Light. Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports is going to be our special guest if all goes well. But right now he's booked in, so we'll talk college football with Dennis Dodd. Again, that will be tomorrow. And then we'll have our Jet show on Friday after that as well. So Jet show. And by the way, Jake Arthur from Colts.com will be our special guest to preview the Jet-Colt game. But again, Dennis Dodd will be our guest tomorrow on our college football show. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter. Don't forget that at PrimeSN. And that's how you can track our shows when they're available on demand. You can post questions or comments there. Or you can go to our email address, ofn@primesportsnetwork.com. All right, let's talk 49ers football right now. Usually, in the past, we talked to Kyle Madson, we talked Tennessee football, but Kyle's made a switch to the Niners, and since Jimmy Garoppolo injured himself earlier this year, I'm wondering whether Kyle felt like he made a mistake. Kyle, did you make a mistake? How is it, Kyle, following the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo?
Not as fun as it was following them with Jimmy Garoppolo, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
They just, they were a couple of years away, even with Garoppolo under center. But now just the the lack of depth on their roster is really apparent now.
Yes.
And there were some people who thought playoffs for this team.
That was ridiculous.
With Garoppolo under center, but it's really clear that wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah, we even saw that week one. I think it was very apparent even right away in the first game of the season with all the talk, which we've seen so many times before in the NFL. Oh, we won the last 3 games of the season, or, hey, we beat 2 playoff teams to end the season. I mean, especially nowadays with all the turnover, it doesn't matter. It's just it's a brand new year. Okay, it's nice. You don't want to lose those games, except, of course, it hurt them for draft position, and I'm sure that's the whole reason why Lynch and Shanahan, because, look, I was talking about it last year on this network. There was no way they were trying to lead me to believe that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't prepared to play last year within a second of when they acquired him. The only reason they were leaving him out was because of draft position. That was it. They were willing. They understood what they had there. They weren't going to get any better necessarily this season, which they didn't really until the injury, by bringing him in early. So let's just kind of, let them get acclimated to the area and don't rush things. And in the meanwhile, we'll go out there and lose 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 games in a row, and boy, it helps our draft stock. We'll get a much better player. Then all of a sudden, Beathard goes down, and all right, I guess we got to put Garoppolo in. Boom, 6 straight wins, kills our draft stock, and then everybody goes super crazy that this is going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, and I think the eventual or the initial plan was they were going to get Garoppolo in eventually because, I mean, they had to do something with him contractually this offseason, so I think they wanted to see something. I don't think they expected him to go win at the clip that he did last year.
Yeah.
And that just built the hype train. There was obviously so much hype coming around the trade because it was just for the second rounder and it was with the Patriots and he was supposed to be Brady's heir apparent. And then he comes over to San Francisco and he doesn't lose. And I think that just really built up the hype train. And then they come out this year, they lose week 1, like you said, in pretty unspectacular fashion. They barely squeak out a win in week 2. Then they go get, blown out by the Chiefs in week 3. They made a late comeback, but they got smoked in that game. And Garoppolo gets hurt, and the season's effectively over.
Yeah, you look, it's a tough blow for a whole bunch of reasons, but definitely for the fact that you just wanted to be able to see a lot of the younger players develop together with Garoppolo. But I think when we take a look at the roster, I'm not so sure. All right, you got Bourne is an interesting young player, and there's a few, of course, Pettis. There's a few guys there, but in general, I don't know. There's still, this is still a team that's 2 or 3 years away from really stocking their roster. I look at their skill position players with Garoppolo, and I'm saying, you know what? I'm not even sure if his starting unit, maybe Kittle's. Kittle will be the one guy that would be starting next year. But he might have, all right, and Goodwin. But when you're really thinking about playoff guys, I mean, he's probably going to have, with the offensive line and definitely a running back, he's going to have some, and again, a McKinnon injury is a big blow, but I never bought in that McKinnon was a true number 1 anyway. So now they're back in the position they were last year, where now Garoppolo's out. Their draft stock is going to go zooming up the draft board. And maybe this is actually not, even though they would like the chemistry built a little bit with some of the young players, maybe in the long run this helps them out because they're going to have better draft stock.
Yeah, I think so. And that's where I've been I'm kind of writing this here and there because it is only week 6. We're going into week 6. So, mathematically, their playoff chances are still there. Anybody with any speck of realism knows their playoff chances are over. They would benefit from losing out way more than they would benefit from winning 4 or 5 games down the stretch. I think we're going to see the coaching staff in the front office see, like you said, what they have on this roster. Offensively, they gave Marquise Goodwin an extension this offseason, and George Kittle has been arguably the best tight end in the league for the first 5 weeks. But after that, Dante Pettis has been hurt. And he only had, I think, 3 catches through his first few games. So they're obviously pretty high on Dante Pettis. They took him early in the second round. But outside of that, they don't really have any star power on offense. Matt Breida is a nice player, and I think he'll be a good complement with Jerick McKinnon. But you hit the nail on the head with McKinnon. I don't think he's a number 1 guy. I think the two of those guys will complement each other very well next year. Joe Staley, the left tackle, is getting up there in age, and they got to face facts there that he's going to be retiring in the next couple of years. They just don't have championship level skill position players right now on offense, and then defensively, Richard Sherman's been a nice add, but Akello Witherspoon, a second-year corner out of Colorado, has been pretty disappointing. Adrian Colbert, he was a seventh-round pick last year, who had a strong finish to the year. He's been very disappointing. Jaquaski Tard, who got an extension this offseason, has been hurt and not playing particularly well. Reuben Foster's taken a step back, and then three of their last 4 first-round picks have all been defensive linemen, and they can't rush the passer, which is a huge issue. Solomon Thomas and Eric Armstead are both effectively non-factors, and because of that, DeForest Buckner, it's much easier to game plan for him, and I think with any sort of talent around him, I think DeForest Buckner is an elite player. But teams right now can just key on him and turn him into a non-factor as well. So, there are just holes all over this roster. John Lynch, the general manager, said they made a aggressive push to try and acquire Khalil Mack, but I can imagine they wanted to hold on to that draft stock or that draft capital.
Oh yeah.
Because when you look at the expansive holes on this roster, they need as much help as they can get through the draft and free agency.
And that's probably why, if they do get, which you got to believe they're going to end up with one of the top picks in the draft this year, that they have to go probably right back again to the defensive line. They probably have to. I mean, if Nick Bosa's healthy, why not go after Bosa, right? He might even be the guy, somebody like that, or one of those Clemson guys.
Their issue has been just the neglect of the edge position. It's such a vital spot in the NFL, and they've just not addressed it. They acquired Cassius Marsh, who is not he's their only pure edge rusher, and he's just not an effective player.
Mm-hmm.
Ronald Blair is a decent piece at defensive end, but, he is a deep rotational guy, and they've got him playing heavy snaps. They're having to kick DeForest Buckner out to the outside. I think they thought Solomon Thomas would be able to. They took him number 3 overall in 2017. I think they thought he would be able to get to the passer off the edge, and he just can't. There are no players on their roster who can impact the game as an outside pass rusher. So I think they have to go there with, like you said, they're getting a top 3 or 5 pick, maybe the top overall, and they need to go edge rush there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go edge rush in free agency with the top pick and maybe with a day 2 pick, because it is easily the worst spot on their roster.
It would be interesting, and I think depending on exactly, especially if he continues to be banged up this season, I could easily see someone like Bryce Love drop a little bit further down, to where the Niners might be able to pick him up with their second pick, and that would be I'm sure that'd be a fan favorite kind of move. That would be the kind of game breaking running back the organization can use as well. What else is there in general, though, that if you're looking right now at the future and saying, okay, obvious up front, let's just say they decide not to go for whatever reason. Can you see, do you go corner? Do you go, again, I don't know. It's always way too early at this point especially, I'm not so sure this draft is going to be anywhere near as good as the last few. There's just been so much talent that has left early in the NFL. Sooner or later, you're going to have one of those bad drafts. And I'm wondering, and again, there will be good players. I just don't know whether or not guys that will be picked in the top 10, like people were talking about some of these quarterbacks that are going to be coming out. And I'm going, boy, I could see a guy like, I could see like 90% of the quarterbacks that are coming out this year would have been 5th-round draft picks next year. So that's just the way that it is. But would you look at corner as another definite need spot, like maybe even number 1A, or would you think offensive tackle is something that is just as important?
I actually wrote about this earlier this week. I think the 49ers badly need a number 1 wide receiver. Marquise Goodwin's like a fine player, fine contributor. Trent Taylor is a nice slot guy. Dante Pettis, I think, will develop nicely. But Dante Pettis and Trent Taylor and Marquise Goodwin, they don't have that big number 1 go-to guy.
Yeah.
that we've seen be so successful with Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's 2 years as the Texans offensive coordinator were Andre Johnson's only 2 All-Pro seasons. They were his best 2 seasons. Julio Jones really elevated into the elite status under Kyle Shanahan. He had his only two All-Pro seasons under Shanahan. And watching all 22 on the 49ers, there are so many times where Kyle Shanahan is a offensive savant, and he schemes guys wide open, but receivers don't just get open, and that impacts their offense a lot. So I could see that big time, like a N'Keal Harry out of ASU, the guy I've got my eye on.
But not obviously. I don't know if that's. I mean, that's a guy though that is somebody that you're thinking about. What as a second pick, something like that. I can't imagine.
Yeah. With that top pick for your top. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking needs. With that pick, you're looking. If they don't go edge, I mean, an offensive tackle, an interior offensive lineman, maybe, corner. If they're picking number 1 through 5, I don't know how they don't go edge.
Yeah,
there's nothing else that makes sense.
That's the heavyweight of this draft class, anyway. It'd be crazy for them not to. And we would, but yeah, it makes sense, to think later on. You go wide receiver and or running back with that second or third pick, and then of course you throw in everything else like offensive line and corner. But it just shows you there's just a lot of needs. How's the cap space for them next year?
Their cap space should be good. They front loaded Garoppolo's contract. I think he got 37 million guaranteed this year. He got a bunch guaranteed up front, because they just had so much cap space. And when I talk about all these guys that are just kind of ineffective players, these are guys on their rookie deals who are going to be coming off the books. I don't know if Eric Armstead will get another contract.
Okay.
They just don't have anybody that's like, they need to sign that guy up. They need to lock him up long term.
Okay.
So their cap space is looking good. I know there's a bunch of edge guys who are going to be hitting the free agent market. Extensions notwithstanding. I think they'll be big players in free agency, because the Eagles showed last year, like, you have to use free agency if you're going to build a Super Bowl contender. So I expect the 49ers to be big players there as well.
Can you see the 49ers trading anybody before the deadline that could be valuable to anybody for any reason?
I think they would be willing to unload. I mean, I've mentioned Eric Armstead. If there's a team that wants to part with a 6th round pick for a kind of reclamation project defensive lineman, because Armstead's not a useless player. I just don't think he quite fits what the 49ers need him to do. A guy like Jimmy Ward, former 1st round pick, who's just kind of positionless, and hasn't been able to crack the rotation. The 49ers have had him at slot corner and outside corner and free safety, and he just can't quite crack the rotation. A name that's been brought up that is very interesting is Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman has an extremely team-friendly contract. He is playing, at least statistically, extremely well this year. Pro Football Focus has their coverage snaps or receptions allowed per coverage snap stat.
Okay.
He's at like 146 coverage snaps per reception allowed. The next closest player is at like 20.
Okay.
He allowed a reception on his first target of the year and hasn't allowed one since.
That sounds like a good one. I don't know why Richard Sherman would want to hang around San Francisco the rest of the year. I mean, at his age, why would he want to do that?
Right, unless he's really like Vince Carter in the NBA has taken to just like he was with the Kings last year, and now he's at the Hawks. He's just kind of that veteran who's going to be like a coach type who's not expected to do much on the field. But no, I imagine a guy with Sherman's competitiveness would enjoy going to a playoff team for sure.
How about the Chiefs?
So if the 49ers could, the 49ers could get a day 2 pick out of somebody for Richard Sherman, I imagine they'd pull the trigger immediately.
Chiefs would be a good location. That would be
they could use some help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at corner they could. So that is because I was talking with Matt Connor a couple of days ago from Arrowhead Addict, and he talked about that he fully expects the Chiefs to make some moves at the deadline.
Yeah, they have to.
And they got to get some guys on defense, and Richard Sherman would be a very good addition to the Chiefs secondary, and I'm sure he would welcome that, you would think. So interesting. Okay, and we'll have more than enough time to talk about the Niners in the offseason. But to wrap up, I mean, Beathard, I'm not seeing any sort of improvement much. I mean, he made some plays in the Charger game, but, I mean, to lose to Arizona, and I'm not saying it was quarterback versus quarterback, but you don't want to lose to Josh Rosen in start number 2, so that's not a good sign. Again, it's not like he's got a lot of talent around him. I get that. But he's trying to hold on to the job of being Jimmy Garoppolo's maybe even long-time backup, but you got to win some games in order to justify that, or else you got to look for someone else.
Yeah, he knows the offense. There's so many minor things that go into quarterbacking that separate a bad quarterback from a good one. He's turned the ball over 6 times in 2 games. The first interception he threw against the Chargers was inside the 10-yard line. It just bounced off Garrett Selleck's chest. Like, nothing Beathard can do. That's not on him.
Sure.
First interception last week, good throw to Pierre Garçon, threw his hands right to a safety. That's not on him. But he fumbled twice, just trying to he holds on to the ball for too long.
Okay.
His first fumble, he had a touchdown to Kyle Juszczyk, who's running wide open, and he didn't step up in the pocket. His second fumble, he just didn't take a sack. Like, it was clear he was going down, and he tried to pump fake and wait for a receiver to get open, but it's like, dude, you just got to take the sack.
Yeah.
So it's just little minor things like that. And then his second interception against the Cardinals was just a bad throw. And it's minor things like that separate the good quarterbacks from the bad ones, and Beathard just doesn't quite have that down. He doesn't get through his progressions quickly enough. He holds onto the ball too long. Doesn't quite have the arm talent to make all the throws. I think he has better arm talent than people give him credit for, but there's just some throws I don't think he can make. And I mean, to the 49ers' credit, they racked up like 400-plus yards of offense. They had 33 first downs against the Cardinals. They just had those 5 turnovers, which killed them.
Yeah.
And part of that, a lot of that was on Beathard and his inability to kind of function physically and mentally in an NFL offense.
So, what's your best guess on this Monday night situation? I mean, obviously, this is not what ESPN's looking for. They were signing up for Garoppolo at this point, but we always get this stuff. We got it last year when Rodgers went down with some of those Packer games. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But it is what it is. It's not like the Packers are playing all that great right now, and they got some injury concerns as well. So, they didn't annihilate the Bills like maybe they should have. They certainly looked pretty bad against Detroit. So is there any reason for you to believe, based on what you've seen from the 49ers, but, it is national TV, so you would hope that you'd get the best out of them, that this could actually be a game going into the fourth quarter?
Well, it looks like Matt Breida is not going to play, which doesn't help, because that means you're going to get a heavy dose of Alfred Morris, who, it's a good backup to spell your starter for 10, 12 carries a game. But if you're leaning on him and their other running back is Raheem Mostert, who's a dynamite special teams guy, but should not be getting carries or touches in a game.
No.
I mean, if the defense, I will give the defense a ton of credit. They tackled better last week. That's been a huge issue for them this year, is just putting ball carriers on the ground. They were better last week. If they put together the defensive performance they put together against the Cardinals, against the Packers, then sure, maybe they squeak out enough points against a not great defense to keep it within 10 or 11 points going into the fourth. But it's
big quarterback
really
difference.
Hard. You said what?
Big quarterback difference, though.
Yeah, it's huge. And the 49ers issue is they're not going to be able to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers and he's going to be able to sit back there and just dice these guys up.
Yeah.
I think the line is like 9.5 points.
Yep.
And I have a hard time believing the 49ers keep it under that.
Okay.
Just based on the matchup, and
so it's more than likely not a game going into the fourth quarter.
No.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a path to it, but that path is very, very tough to find.
Yeah, and the Packers fans might just run Mike McCarthy out of town if it is a game going into the fourth quarter.
Man,
so,
I'm telling you.
yeah. That's one head coach that's had. He's living off that Super Bowl. I think he's been living off that Super Bowl for the last 3 years. In my mind, he should have been fired 3 years ago.
I'm totally with you.
So time is running out on Mike McCarthy. Okay, so by the way, last question. Give me any young players we should keep an eye on. And again, I mentioned Bourne. I don't know if he's really a guy that you think has a big future in the league, but give me a name or two players that most people may have never heard of before that could become more household names now that they're going to get some opportunities to play this season.
If you haven't heard of George Kittle yet, get familiar.
Yeah, I think we've heard of him. Sure.
Yeah, super athletic tight end. Is having a great year. On the defensive side, watch Fred Warner, third-round pick out of BYU.
Yeah, sure.
Really, really good. Kind of the modern hybrid safety linebacker type. Really good in coverage. Can get downhill against the run. Had an excellent preseason. Had a great first few games. So he's a guy who they think can pair long term with Reuben Foster and try and kind of rekindle some of that Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman magic they had from the early 2010s. So Fred Warner's a guy. George Kittle's a guy. And if Matt Breida plays, he's extremely exciting. His 7+ yards per carry are not a fluke. He's patient, he's quick, he's got breakaway speed. So if he plays, definitely keep an eye on him as well because he's a very good young player.
Yep. Yeah, actually, Breida and Aaron Jones were two of my draft sleepers last year, and they're the two that have made me look the best. So maybe they'll both play on Monday night, and especially Jones a little bit more healthier. Like you said, Breida may not play, but I agree with you. Breida is a player to keep an eye on, and he'll get a great opportunity most of the season to maybe try and convince the Niners that this isn't the year to go after a running back too high in the draft. Yeah. But we'll see. He's got to stay healthy. Kyle, thanks a lot. Great job. I'm glad you're all in. It sounds like you are on everything going on with the 49ers. And even though it's going to be a rough season, this is kind of one of those seasons that fans kind of, when you're in rebuild, this is when they really do need the information from guys like you to follow the team and where the holes are and free agency in the draft. But whole half a season and more to go, unfortunately, for 49er fans before they get to the part of the next 8 months that actually is something they can get excited about. So do your best to enjoy some of these games because they're not going to be pretty.
I'll sure try.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
Okay, take care. All right, that's Kyle Madson. And you can check out his work once again for the 49ers by going to the NinersWire.usatoday.com. So I'm sure if you just type up Niners Wire, Google that, you'll know where to go. Again, Kyle Madson, who formerly ran the Tennessee website for the same company. All right, so that is going to wrap it up today. Now, again, tomorrow we've got more football, more college football talk. That is going to be in the morning. Well, actually, we have college football and pro football, but the pro football is just for Jet fans and Colt fans. So tomorrow we've got our college football show in the morning with Mitch Light from Athlon. Again, Dennis Dodge from CBS Sports is going to join us. And then we're going to take a look at our top picks of the week. Both of us had our top double-digit outright dog last week. Let's see. Mitch had Iowa State over Oklahoma State, and I had San Diego State over Boise State. So We've been doing pretty good on those picks. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, and then we'll break down some of the key games from last week and, of course, the games from this week. Oh, just to let you know, in case you're interested in the game tonight, Alex Bowman does not look like he's going to play quarterback for Texas Tech. So we'll wrap up that game tomorrow morning show if something interesting happens. And Troy quarterback Caleb Barker's out for the year. Sawyer Smith takes over against Liberty. We'll go over some of those types of key injuries as well that you want to keep an eye on for the games in college and pro, but mostly in college for obviously our college football show, but for the pro shows like we have on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, we'll let you know what's going on, but it's still kind of early for the pros. So there's not a whole lot to give you today. Questionable nowadays to even sometimes doubtful. I mean, you don't know if these guys are playing or not. Sometimes the doubtful guys play by the time Sunday is. Oh, they're not practicing today, but they're out and available on game time. So that's why we don't go too much into NFL injuries. But we'll do that for college football, and especially with all the teams and how hard it is sometimes to get information. So keep that in mind, too, when we do our show tomorrow. We also have our Jets show tomorrow. We'll have Jake Arthur on from Colts.com to preview that game with Randy Lang. So for Kyle Madson, for Ted Sevransky of Covers.com, I'm Greg DePalma. And don't forget, this is the OFN Today, Our Lads Football Network. You know the drill. Alpha, Mike, Foxtrot.